Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Real podcast. We're so excited that you're with us. Each and every week, we're going to open up God's Word. We're going to have some discussion around what it means to live an intentional life. So let's listen in as we try to get real together.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Get Real podcast. My name is Brandon Ginden. I am the senior pastor at Real Life Ministries, Texas, and here on the Get Real podcast, I'm with my friend and ministry partner, Lori Arnold.
Hey, friends.
And we are launching a new series here on this episode. We are going to be launching a new series about our faith in the workplace, because here on the Get Real podcast, what Lori and I care deeply about is talking through what it looks like to walk out our faith in real life and to talk about real topics, and hopefully to encourage, to motivate, inspire you based on the things that we go through in life, the ups, downs, things we are good at, passionate about, or sometimes not as good at, or less passionate about, because it's real and it's real life. And so if this podcast does encourage you and help you, and it's been a blessing to you, we say this often, is just that you would share it with your friends and help to get the word out, and that this would be a blessing to others. And so we are going to jump into this episode today. And what we want to do on this one is kind of introduce the topic. We are excited. We're going to be having some different folks we're going to be interviewing, and we do that once in a while, interview folks and bring them on and talk about different topics in the workplace and sharing their faith and what it's like to live that out. And some of the folks we're going to have, I'm really excited about, because they are special people to Lori and I, and do an amazing job at representing the Lord in their spheres and in areas that they work. And so I want to start us today, Lori, by reading a couple passages. I think sets up the series as a whole, but especially on this episode. And Paul, in his letter in 2 Corinthians in chapter 5, talks about us representing the Lord. And he's going to use the term ambassador, and how we are ambassadors for the Lord out into the world. And so I want to read that. And here in verse 18, he says, "All this is from God, who through Christ reconciled us to himself and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. That is, in Christ, God was reconciling the world to himself, not counting their trespasses against them, and entrusting to us the message of reconciliation. Therefore, we are ambassadors for Christ, God making his appeal through us. We implore you on behalf of Christ, be reconciled to God." And so in this passage here in 2 Corinthians, Paul is talking about that we are given this ministry.
Yeah.
Now, I think what's really important is he wasn't just talking to pastors or people on staff at a church. He's given us, the whole church, all of us. So no matter where we go, if we are followers of Jesus Christ, we are given this ministry of reconciliation, a message. We know the gospel is the reconciling message that we bring to the world. And we get this picture of being an ambassador.
Yeah.
And what is an ambassador is a person from one country representing the government or the king or the president to some other country. And being that representative, you carry the beliefs and the systems and the core, the heart of that country to another group of people. And that's really what we're supposed to do in the workplace. And so I know for you, Lori, we had a fun conversation, which we always do before the conversation before the conversation. And I didn't know this. I mean, we've talked about a lot of different things, but I didn't know some of your work experience.
Yeah.
And I was very entertained by that. And so I'm gonna pass it over to you, kind of the thoughts, and as you have had different jobs before being in full-time ministry, representing Christ, being his ambassador. So maybe share some of that.
Yeah. I love the term ambassador. I think it's something that it's important for me. It's been important to me to remember, that I am a representative of the Lord. I am a representative of Jesus Christ wherever I go. And I haven't always been great at that. But
Mhm.
when I am,
Yeah.
you know, and as I've grown, really, as I've grown closer with the Lord, that has mattered more to me.
Sure.
And so I care less and less about other people and what they think, and more about what he thinks, and trying to please him and do what I'm supposed to do for him. I will say, yes, I've had some amazing opportunities to share my faith with others, especially in the workplace. And as we were even talking earlier, I was thinking about, you know, that can be really, really hard for many people. Some of the people that I worked with, they were atheists. My boss was an atheist. I was surrounded, everybody in my whole, in the whole office was Muslim.
Okay.
So very different beliefs there.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I was younger, I do believe that I just didn't care as much what people thought. And then that changed as I got older and tried to, you know, please others and be careful around, you know, what I'm saying around people, not to upset them and things like that. But when I was young, I'm still a pretty fun girl, but I was real goofy and like just.
I'm trying to imagine that more than now. Lori, more goofy and more fun. Okay. All right.
So
Sorry.
It was really easy for me though, like to share my beliefs with others, because I had such a carefree spirit. Like I really didn't care what anybody thought. Like talking the WWJD bracelets and the shirts and come at me, bro. Like ask me a question about Jesus. I'm ready. Let's go.
Sure.
And I do believe that as we get older, we have more life experience that sometimes changes that eagerness and that willingness. And and so and I'm not saying that every single person does this, but I've seen it a lot, and I know that I did. You know, I become a little bit more sensitive to others and their feelings regarding what I'm bringing to the table, and even sometimes my big personality. I'll shift and like I'll get kind of quiet, you know, just to match them.
Sure.
And so that's a work in progress, but I think that just looking back, like how that has changed and how now today I am coming to a place that is where I feel that I can speak boldly about the Lord in love, with grace, because that's what I'm saying was missing when I was younger.
Okay.
So, for instance, one of my, I mentioned my atheist boss at one of my jobs. He was awesome. We got along so well. People thought that we actually were related. They thought he was either my dad or my grandpa. They didn't know which one. We kind of looked alike. But he knew I was a Christian. My best friend and I actually worked at the same place together.
Okay.
She's also a believer, who now, I mean, she's doing her thing. She's got albums out and everything else for the Lord, and it's pretty awesome. But anyway, so we would sing songs.
Okay.
And I'm laughing because sometimes we knew we were being obnoxious to him, which is not the way to go. That's what I'm telling you. This is how I used to be now. But we would sing songs. We were unashamed. We were unashamed of the gospel, 100%.
Okay.
So there is a piece of that I believe is absolutely important, that we should have, that I should have wherever I go. He heard the gospel. He did not want to hear it. One of the interesting things was, though, we treated him with love. So much so, he supported us in everything. He gave me a gift for my wedding. You know, he gave me a ride to school. I mean, to work, not to school. If I needed a ride, Mom, Dad, nobody's home, because I got my job without them even knowing I was applying for a job. I was like 15 and came home and said, "Hey, I got a job." They're like, "What?"
Yeah.
So it was pretty fun. But the impact, I don't know the impact that it's had. And in fact, I still I don't stalk, but I would love to see him again, just to see where he's at today.
Yeah.
And to have another opportunity, you know, to share the gospel and just to share not just because it's a big thing, but to share about my Jesus and
Yeah.
what he's done in my life.
Yeah.
So I've had countless experiences like that, but in those situations, I was unashamed and I shared my faith. And like I said, as I got older, moved into, I'm talking a lot.
You're good.
Okay.
You're good.
I moved into another job where I was a receptionist, and everybody in the office, for the most part, there were a couple of people in billing that weren't, but they were Muslim. And I was kind of like the gopher. If they needed somebody to go to the bank, I'd go for that.
Yeah.
You know, if they needed coffee, like it was pretty old school. Like I'm making your coffee the way I memorize. I still know the way they like their coffee. Right now, I could go make it.
Sure.
And they'd be so happy. But one of the interesting things to me, I've always had such a very good relationship with the people that I have worked with, regardless of our differences. And so I know that can happen. Doesn't happen all the time, but I praise God for that. And so much so that one of the friends that I worked with, we became friends. She's Muslim. We were able to have some serious conversations about our faith.
Sure.
And so, and we're still friends and we have differences, and no, neither one of us has converted, and I will not. But we are able to have healthy dialogue. And
That's
do I
great.
still pray for her? Absolutely.
That's great.
You know, but there is a way to have those conversations and build relationship in a workplace, even when you're not working with believers.
Yeah, that's, I wanted to ask some questions on that because when you go back to where you said you started in this first place with the boss that people thought was your dad or grandpa, and that in that environment, and you and your friend singing and unashamed and all kinds of good there, and you kind of were looking back on that, and when I was listening to you, and you were kind of reflecting that you've learned from then, you know, there it was kind of this. You didn't use the word free for all, but there was a lot of freedom in all of that. And you were maybe today maturity, not in a bad way, like has kind of toned that down a little bit. Then you moved over to this other place that you worked, and you were making the coffees and all that. And you knew what people, even today, you can make their coffee. You said something, I think a consistent thing between both of those is you developed relationships with people in a way that I like to use the phrase, you earned the right to be the ambassador, to share about who you are, to be unashamed. And they didn't throw you out.
Yeah.
They didn't excommunicate you. There's reasons for that. I mean, the Lord is behind all of that.
Absolutely.
So that's where I want to go to, is maybe as being that ambassador and representing the Lord, what helped you be able to continue to share, continue to have relationships with a person that's not a Christian, a Muslim, and have those dialogues and conversations. There's some things between the two that I would guess would be a consistent thing or themes that you could look at, that you could share with people and go, here's what I did, or here's what was really important between those two that allowed me to be the ambassador, continue to speak into, continue to say what I needed to say. What thoughts on that?
One thing, I know I respected their beliefs. That doesn't mean that I agree with, but like, for instance, they would pray at the same time every Friday or every day or whatever. I respected that. I gave that time when they were doing that. They also knew my beliefs. I wasn't ashamed or afraid to say, oh, I can't be at this because I have a church function or whatever. They knew what I did. They knew that I served on the worship team at my church. I wasn't afraid to be truthful about what I believe and who I am just because of what they believe. So I was firm with that. I stood firm on my faith, but I also had respect for them and their beliefs. I didn't try to throw everything that I had on them.
Well, my guess is, because I know you, so I'm cheating a little bit, there was a lot of kindness that was put in there.
Oh yeah.
There was a lot of, I'm not gonna be arrogant or a jerk or belligerent or any of those kinds of things about it. And also, I'm guessing, because I know you, that you weren't, their faith didn't intimidate you or didn't
Right.
cause you to be insecure and afraid. You were confident in who you were as ambassador, but you were still kind in those things to them. Not, I'm filling in some things, I think, because I know you, which you probably were. Is that?
Oh yeah, 100%. I loved them well. I can say that. I loved them well, whether that was bringing coffee and memorizing how they like their coffee, regardless of how grumpy he was on the day that he'd say, Lordy, bring me some coffee. And, I'd do it with joy and I would bring him his coffee, and I did my job to the best of my ability. I did my job. I tried to do my job as work unto the Lord,
right.
And so that, I do believe that is what made the difference. As I was looking around the workplace, even as I look back now, thinking about some of the other people that were in there with me, the attitude was different.
Yeah.
So I didn't change my attitude based off of their beliefs.
Yeah.
I stayed who I was supposed to be. And I was the ambassador that I was supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really great. Just when you were talking, it made me think of, opportunity for me to brag on one of my kids really quick, even though it's not in the workplace. One of the things I watched with my daughter Olivia in softball, it isn't a workplace, but it's similar.
Oh yeah.
And she's been around many different girls her age that come from a lot of different backgrounds. And that was the part that I've watched her do, is regardless of their belief system, she's just loved them well.
Yeah.
And has been able to lead some of her teammates to the Lord and baptize them and all of that over the years. And it made me think of that. I was like, that's what Livia does well.
Yes, she does.
And that's what you've done well, is to be able to love people right there in that. Because about being an ambassador is I think this is an important part, and I want your thoughts on this, is we're not representing a religious system.
Right.
We're representing the person of Christ. And we talk a lot about this as king. If we go in representing a denomination, we go in representing even our church, those things aren't necessarily bad. But if what you were doing is going, I'm going to go and be the best example of my king to them.
Yeah.
So, Jesus, some of the things that he modeled of who he sat with and how he behaved. He didn't agree with the sin that they were in. He didn't agree with what they may have believed. And we're not going to convert to that or become them.
Right.
But you loved in a way that represented the Lord well.
Yes.
Is that accurate or what? So maybe just talk really quick then, because you did those things, just share a little bit, like what kind of conversations opened up? What kind of things did they ask you? What kind of, what you said earlier, I'm not sure the impact. Well, surely there was some impact that you saw on some of that. What was some of it?
Well, sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes it wasn't always great, especially the first job that I talked about because of my approach. I was an annoying 16-year-old kid, bothering my boss. Like, you need to know Jesus, like shake the devil off, type thing. Like, literally probably said that to him and did a dance along with it. Like, no doubt. So the approach was very different with him. So he'd be like, you're getting on my nerves, and he'd walk out the room, whatever, I will say this, the relationship, is still there with, I don't know so much with him because I haven't talked to him in years, but I still go and visit my other job, my other place of employment, my Muslim friends. I still go and visit them, just pop in to say hello. We have a very good relationship.
That's really neat.
And so I like that you mentioned it's earning the right to really speak into their lives, to even be heard.
Sure.
Because if we don't have that, it's going to be much harder for them to receive what we are going to say. And the friend that I have that I connected with on a deeper level, she and I would have really deep conversations about even particular religious things that especially she had to do. She would share those with me. It was very interesting to me. And she'd share how she felt about that sometimes, you know, her agreement with it or her disagreement with it. And we were able to have these deep conversations about
That's
our
really
faith.
neat. Yeah.
And, you know, I'm being careful. I'm trying not to like say who she is or anything, but like I said, truth, I still stood firm on truth and what I believe.
Yep.
But there is a way to do that without bashing someone.
Absolutely.
And being so loud and obnoxious that nobody wants to listen to you.
Yes.
And I made sure, like it was a safe space, kind of the same thing that we try to create in a small group environment, just a safe place for everybody to share what they're really feeling and thinking. And that's the way that we grow. And so that's been to me, the everlasting impact. Besides, like, the hope is, yes, that they would come to know the Lord. But right now, a lot of people, if you mention the word Christian, they're going to have different thoughts in their mind about what that means and looks like. I want to be the epitome of an ambassador for Jesus.
Right.
I want people, when they think of me, I want them to think of him. I want them to think of the way that he loves. And I want it to be pure and authentic. And I don't want it to be I don't want to be another person that has failed them. And not saying I won't mess up, because I will.
Sure. Yep.
But I want to represent him well. And so if I'm that one person that they're like, I remember the way Lori treated me, and she believes in the Lord and she is following Christ, I want to be like her.
Right.
Regardless of what other people are doing over here. So I believe that impact can be really great.
For sure. That's so good. So good. Well, I think on that, hopefully, I mean, that's very inspirational to me, because you're painting a picture of, I think, what Jesus wants us to do and how to walk this out. And for everybody that's watching or listening, that's what this series is going to be about. We're going to interview different folks and talk about what this looks like lived out in their workplace, and to really encourage and motivate people, because to see a revival, to see people praying about that, talking about it, we need to see a revival in our country. I really believe this. The truth is, the revival is going to happen if God chooses that to occur and we see it in our lifetime. It's going to happen from that kind of stuff. Of kids on college campuses that are believers, listening to, loving, caring, walking alongside non-believers, not screaming and yelling at them. And that all across this country, Christians earning the right to be able to share truth and love people right where they're at. And so it's just really good, Lori. Well, we hope that this encouraged you today. And if it did, we would just ask you to share it with your friends, share it in social media. And we hope that you'll join us back. We're going to have some fun interviews coming up on the next few episodes. So thank you for being there and joining us today. God bless you all.
Hey, thanks for joining us on the Get Real podcast today. My hope each and every week is that you're able to take the content, apply it to your life, that it becomes more of who you are and less of what you do, and that we live an intentional life together. If you're interested in supporting the work of ministry here at Real Life Texas, we'd like to invite you to do that by going to reallifetexas.org/give and supporting us today.